Okay, good evening. It is Monday, August 26th, 2024 at 6 p.m. in the Susan Tully Lodgley boardroom of the 1887 building. I'd like to start by reciting the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'd like to call the meeting to order, and Mr. Chandlock, would you do roll call, please?
Mr. Andre. Here. Mr. Gayheart. Here. Mayor Gordon. Here. Mrs. Ingersoll.
Here.
Mrs. Costa. Here. Mrs. Reckles.
Here.
Mr. Scarrow.
Here.
This meeting has been noticed for state statutes, and typically we have a community participation at this time, but didn't receive any cards filled out to speak, so we'll move on to the first item on the agenda, the Girls Confidence Boot Camp presentation.
All right. Do you want us to stay here?
Oh, you
No.
know.
Okay. All right. Yeah. We want to see all their shiny faces.
All right. Yeah.
Alex, or you want me to just play?
You when it's the next girl's turn, you can play.
Girls, you can line up right across the front here.
Okay. All right. And then face to face. Are you ready? Okay.
Face us.
All right. Come on over here, and you can just stand in line next to me. All right. Okay. So we last week just ran our second Girls Confidence Boot Camp at the middle school, and these lovely ladies came with me to talk a little bit about the camp and let you know their thoughts. But if you don't know what the Confidence Boot Camp is, it's something that we started last year for girls who are approaching the middle school age. So we started our days with making breakfast, which I think was a lot of our favorite parts. And just talked a lot about how food nourishes us through our day, and how to move our bodies as an act of self-care. We did a lot of mindfulness activities and did a lot of journaling. And we also talked a lot about friendships and what positive, supportive friendships look like at the middle school age. So it was a really fun week, and we wanted to thank you for supporting us and running this camp. Yeah. So if you want to, there you go. And then, let's see, Autumn, do you want to start? Sure. Okay.
My name is Autumn Haggy. This is my first year of the Girls Confidence Camp. I'm very glad I signed up. It was extremely fun for me. And one of my favorite parts was definitely the journaling. It was a quiet and personal time to write down all your thoughts. And I'm very glad to be here.
Awesome.
My name is Heidi Sellenheim, and I am in 5th grade at Westside Elementary. The best part of Confidence Camp was the day we walked to Matheson Memorial Library to make friendship bracelets, which is one of my favorite hobbies. On Tuesday was my birthday, and everybody sang happy birthday to me. It made me feel great. I have been terrified about starting a new school, but this camp made me confident about making new friends. I have also been practicing the relaxation ideas that I learned by meditating, and that's helped tell my body that I am safe. Confidence Camp was one of my favorite activities this summer, and I plan to do it next year.
Awesome.
Hi, my name is Anna. Today I will share my Confidence Camp experience. This camp is very fun. My friends and I had an amazing time at the camp. We did crafts, had fun walks through a beautiful garden, and loved the snacks. It boosted my confidence by a lot. We all agreed that we wanted to come back next year for more fun. There were calming parts too, like meditations and writing in our journals. The journaling and meditation were my favorites. I will try to continue those things. When I say this, I speak for everyone at camp. None of us wanted this week to end. Thank you very much for listening, and I hope you all have an amazing evening.
Thank you.
My name is Cora Barth, and what my favorite thing about Confidence Boot Camp was about making all kinds of friends and doing all sorts of stuff that can make us all confident. And I recently went to an audition for a play, and I felt confident, so I went for it and I got in.
Alright. Which play is it for?
Junior.
Nice, cool, very cool, awesome. All right, and Grace, go ahead.
Hi, my name is Grace Shuren, and my favorite part about Confidence Boot Camp was the journaling. I really liked writing down my thoughts, and it was fun to look back from each day and see my favorite things from the week.
Very cool. Yeah, that's awesome, you guys. I love it.
Yeah,
That's really wonderful.
so we had a great week, we had a lot of fun, and we had a lot of girls, they all wanted to come, but I could only bring 5.
Right.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, thank you for supporting that.
Yeah,
Good
absolutely.
time.
Does anybody have any questions?
The kids were there. So.
There were 27, and we had 4 in the waiting list. So next year we could probably open it up a little more.
So exactly what grades are attending this?
So we did ages 10 through 12.
Okay, so it's age-based versus grade.
Yes,
Okay.
yeah. And last year we had 1 little girl from McQuantico who told her friends. So this year we had 7 girls from McQuantico.
Oh, wow.
So yeah,
Okay.
so we I think could make it a little bigger next year.
Yeah,
Give room for everybody. So yeah.
awesome. Well, thank you very much, girls.
Yeah, thank you.
You all did a wonderful job presenting.
Yes, that takes confidence.
It does.
And when's your play?
In the middle of October.
Very cool. All right.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, baby.
You're welcome, thank you.
Weather worked out well.
Yeah, apparently. All right.
It doesn't matter. Okay, moving on to the approval of the school board minutes. We've got regular and closed session minutes. We should probably do the closed session. Well, let's see. I mean, you weren't here for any of it. Okay. Okay, so we can do, I think we can combine them. Looking for a motion to approve those minutes.
I moved to. You have to say that.
It's okay. I know, it's not good.
I move to approve the minutes of the August 12, 2024 regular and closed session school board meeting as presented.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. It's been moved and seconded to approve the minutes of the August 12, 2024 regular and closed session school board meeting. Roll call vote, please.
I have a question first.
Okay.
I was not here for the end of the closed session.
That's okay.
Okay. Because I did voice my opinion prior to that.
Yep,
Okay,
you sure did.
thank you.
All right, Mr. Andre?
Yes.
Mr. Gayheart?
Yes.
Mayor Gordon? Yes. Mrs. Ingersoll?
Yes.
Mrs. Costock?
Yes.
Mrs. Reckles?
Abstain.
Mr. Scarrow?
Yes.
Did we technically have 2 closed sessions or just one that got broken up by the regular? Oh, that's a good question.
Yeah, we technically had 2, but I think this covers both of them. Yeah.
Ditto.
All right, general and other fund bills.
The general other fund bills this evening covers checks number 152,870 through 152,970, wire transfers 166 through 168, and ACH numbers 068 through 099, and a combined amount of $312,011.77. There was a memo providing some additional information with the bills, and then I included a copy then of the treasurer's report through the month of June, which would represent the entire fiscal year.
Yep.
For that time period. So, Jason, if you could jump to that, I'd love to go over a couple of, it's at the end of the same report.
Yeah, it's actually really encouraged by the numbers,
Yeah.
actually.
Yeah, and I think some explanation is probably necessary. If you like, I kind of go
Yep.
through it real quick.
Absolutely.
And of course, there's a top section, which is revenues and. Yeah, just go back one,
page?
yep,
Yep. that was
so,
okay,
yeah,
I don't know if you can see it, I'll try to.
so.
Well, we can put it, pull it up.
You
on
can see a little,
computers.
yeah. So on the expense side, you know, most of our expenses matched up fairly closely with what we have for budget. The biggest difference, go up, Jason. Thank you. Is with the benefit piece, and because we switched to a self-funded health insurance plan, that impacts the actual amount of the costs that we had for the first 6 months, because there's always a lag in when the actual expenses start coming through. So typically, we would have seen about a $1.4 million cost factor in the benefit piece had we been fully insured.
Right.
So the expenses normally, if you factor that in, would have been about 97.8%, which is probably about where we want to be on the expense side. But because of that one-time adjustment, and you'll see how it affects on our balance sheet later, but that affects the expenses for last year.
Right.
And I'm pretty sure that that won't happen again. It's just
Right.
the way it happens with self-funded. On a revenue side, we had a couple of things that probably impacted us more than originally would have anticipated. Interest income, because we were able to gain over 4.5% or 5.5% on all our investments for the year. Typically about 50 to 75,000 is what we would see in interest income, and that ended up being over 400,000 this past year.
Yeah. Yeah.
Additional open enrollment throughout the year. We usually do a snapshot in September. And then that's what we book kind of is what we anticipate. But as students come and go through the year, that gets credited. And at the end of the school year, we get the proration of those students that come in during the school year. So that factors in. Special ed was a little higher. We were able to claim some of the high cost reimbursements. So we get a reimbursement from the state on any student that has a cost factor over $30,000. And then we get a proration. We're not for sure exactly what we're going to get. We have some carryover and grant monies. And then our Medicaid came in very high this year in terms of reimbursement. And part of that is capturing 2 fiscal years, 21-22 and 22-23, through what's called the school-based reimbursement program through the Medicaid. And it's just, there's a lag at the federal level in terms of when those monies come through. So we won't see that again, probably.
Right.
So the impact then of having, the health insurance on the expense and those additional revenues puts us in a positive. I probably shouldn't have had it in red there, should I? So from what we anticipated to where we ended up was pretty nice in terms of fiscal impact. But I don't think I would anticipate that going forward for those unique reasons.
Yeah.
If you flip to the next page on fund balance, on the asset side, we have some built up because of the health insurance. We have a separate account for that. So that's that cash build up through the month of June.
Yeah.
Liabilities was similar, except for the health insurance was a little higher. But when you get down to what's called the fund balance, the classifications change because we have different categories now. We've always had what's called non-spendable, which is basically any inventory we have on hand, which we don't carry a lot of inventory. Unspent common school funds, but you'll see the reserve for fund balance for health insurance. And what accounting rules allow us to do is to reserve what would be about 2.5 months of normal health insurance costs. So that's what's reflected in that number. So when you get down to the assigned fund balance and compare that to a percentage, we're about where we started. At the beginning of the year. So compared to where we, I think, anticipated we would have been based on our budget plan, we ended up actually probably much better.
Because we had taken money out of the fund balance to pay down debt, right?
Yes, well,
Or
we used our built up in debt service to pay for that
Okay.
portion, but we anticipated digging into our fund balance just to get through the school year.
right.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, and we ended up not having to do that, so.
So that
Yeah.
puts us in a much better state.
We had anticipated going about 2.4 million.
Mhm.
in the red,
Yes.
yeah, and we ended up at 1.8 in the black. Yeah,
With money set aside for.
Yeah,
that.
that's a huge shift.
Yeah, so from an audit standpoint, we don't have our final audit reports, but the field audit is done. So there may be some minor adjustments, but I'm pretty confident these are close to final numbers.
Awesome.
So last year, so.
That's amazing.
I just want to highlight, I think this really shows the value in having that healthy fund balance to where we're not having to cash flow borrow to meet the
100%.
need. Instead, we were able to, generate 400, almost 500,000 in interest rather than paying
Yep.
that dollar amount. And so I think that's critical for the financial health of the district.
I'm looking at cash flow for this next year and trying to anticipate if we need to have at least a line of credit with the bank.
Mhm.
And it takes like 30 days to go through the process, so you can't wait till that time that
Right.
you need it to start the process. So I'm debating to go through the paperwork. There's a couple $1,000s worth of cost to go through the paperwork, even if
Okay.
we don't use the line of credit, but I'm looking at that right now,
Okay,
so.
So it was a fortuitous year. It pushed off that eating away of some of the fund balance, but
Yeah.
this year's budget bill, perhaps could you remind what our projected deficit is this year?
Yeah, it's over 4 million in terms of,
That's where that referendum question in the fall is so critical to help offset that. It's not, the first year will not provide 4 million, but
Right.
we're anticipating having to go into fund balance to counterbalance the difference.
yeah.
You're a rock star, Bill.
I know.
Thank you, but it wasn't all.
I know.
There were
You
just
and
so
your
many
team.
things that.
Yeah.
The stars were aligned all at the same time to a certain extent.
Yeah,
But I think the main point I know you understand is that I don't think we'll see this again.
Right.
With those one-time revenues and that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's good time.
hey, any questions for Mr. Truen?
Either Mr. Truen or Mr. Tadlock. A couple months ago, I was bombarded by CISA 2 with their help for Act 20. And I noticed that we went with CISA 6. I have no problem with it. I just want the reasoning. Within our literacy program and adoption, we've had a partnership with CISA 6 and their trainer who's worked with our staff for some years. So I know Amy could speak better to that than myself, but following that coaching model and so forth, that's what the team felt most comfortable with, and they were already working with the team.
Champions 101. And I know the program, haven't we had that for a while?
We have had it for several years.
Yeah, but I forgot my glasses. I thought I saw somewhere that this was a first time charge for it. Have we been paying $3,000 a year for it, or?
I think there was an introductory for the first year, so I can't, to be honest with you, I don't think it was 3,000 the first time.
Okay,
So, and I don't know if we've expanded the program. That's probably a John Handle question.
yeah. No, it's a good program.
I think
What I
it
didn't
has
know.
been expanded because this is the first time we've had the actual coach come down and do the presentation to the athletes, the parents, and
Okay,
coaches.
okay.
So I think it was.
That was probably part of the expense, really additional expense to have.
Yeah, no, it's a cool program. I just, when it said represents new program for athletes, I was just curious what that was about. Cool.
I had just a couple questions. There were two things related to, one was for high school textbooks and it says MPS LLC, and I'm like, is that MPS as in
Milwaukee Public Schools.
Milwaukee Public Schools, or when it said LLC, I thought, well, maybe it's not that. Because I was like, why are we buying textbooks from MPS?
Yeah, we're not buying textbooks from them.
Okay, so it's a different
It
organization.
is. I
Okay.
can look up to get the acronym for it.
That's okay, it's fine. And then what is N2Y?
Go ahead.
Sure.
It stands for News to You, and it's part of a curriculum for students who are
Yep.
out of the essential elements. So
Yep.
it's with the unique learning system.
Yep, I've heard of News to You before, I just didn't know,
Yeah.
didn't recognize the acronym, so, okay, awesome, thanks.
Amy texted and said she's happy to follow up with you regarding CISA 6, but that my response was spot on, so. We'll leave you on mute.
Professional services for Westosha admin, $4,000. I don't know what it's about.
Yeah, it's consulting services and Emily could probably touch upon that, but it has nothing to do with Westosha schools. Just-
That was confusing for everyone.
That was confusing.
We actually called them, and were like, did you accidentally put the wrong school name on here? But no, they started out in Kenosha, so everything west of the I, they kind of call Westosha, even though we are very far from the interstate. So that is just for our partnership that we have with them for the school-based mental health services consulting. It covers their administrative kind of fees with kind of helping us with setting up those referrals, meeting with families, their staff time. With our staff, those kind of things. So it's an annual fee.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, hearing none, then looking for a motion to approve.
I move to approve the general and other fund bills of August 26, 2024, check numbers 152870 to 152970. Wire numbers 166 to 168 and ACH numbers 068 to 099 in the combined amount of $312,011.77 as presented.
Is there a second?
I second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the general and other fund bills of August 26, 2024, check numbers 152870 to 152970. Wire numbers 166 to 168 and ACH numbers 068 to 099 in the combined amount of $312,011.77. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Next item is the summer operations maintenance report.
Right.
Mr. Jack.
How's everybody doing? So, here today to kind of go over some of the things that we've done so far, in the spring and the summer of 2024. Just give you guys a little bit of a background on some of the projects we've been doing and, why. So, we kind of had a broad range of things. I mean, when we first started out with this, and you can see the list of what kind of highlighted vehicles as we move forward, we really chose to focus on things that were safety related as much as possible. With the budget amount that we had to work with, I thought it was most beneficial to be able to do things that would benefit the students in the community alike, and have our most bang for the buck. So here's kind of where we were on the budget cost for some of the projects that we took, and all these items, we did come in at or below what we had anticipated those being. And there's again a wide range of things here that we'll kind of look at as we move forward. First off, I want to kind of highlight some of the projects that our own team has been working on. I mean, one of my goals when I came in was trying to get the guys and the gals a little bit more involved and a little bit more hands-on. Most of them have an amazing skill set from the backgrounds that they come with, so giving them the opportunity to do little things, whether it be painting or building things or being more hands-on, it's something that as a team they've really enjoyed. And that picture there is us at our annual picnic that we had in June. As you can see, we kind of remodeled or repainted the main gym at the high school. We did this during our spring break, the time that they would typically be working on just kind of touching up or trying to do just busy work. We kind of tackled doing a full repaint of that gym. We got to where you would see the yellow line on the middle picture or the right picture. And the old, if you've been in there, obviously most of you have probably been in there when it's old, there's a whole lot of yellow going up the wall, and it just looked a little bit incomplete. So we worked with the high school admin team to come up with a design for that, and our custodial team at the high school kind of tackled that hands-on back then. So
Looks great.
and then another one of the projects we had was the gym floor revamps. None of our floors got sanded down over the summer or over the spring, but what we tried to do, we are trying to get into a rotation so that we can do that annual maintenance and be able to spread it out over different fiscal years. For us with West Side and Tibbetts, it had been years since those had been just top scrubbed and recoated. So we wanted to get those in, and we took care of those in the spring. And once those got completed, we kind of got rid of the floor scrubbers on those. We kind of went to a hands-on cleaning system, which is more of a brush pull or mist the floor, and then we use almost like a dust mop on it, which takes a lot of the wear and tear off of that floor, and it gives it a better shine, and it's a little bit better traction, and it's a little bit easier on the floor because you're not putting the weight on there. We'll do the same thing over at Options, but unfortunately with the size of the main gym, right, it's a little bit harder to do that. So we tackled West Side and Tibbetts in the spring, and we hit Options in the main gym at the high school once we got to July 1. Jackson Elementary, that's another one. I mean, you can see kind of on that picture in the lower left there. It's a little bit outdated in its color scheme, so we kind of took that project on as a theme over the summer. Had a little bit of fun with it, and we're kind of getting that up and repainted. I will, in about a week, be able to text you or email you pictures of it completed with the code base on, and I think it'll be exciting to see because we've got more purple columns, we're getting some yellow in there, and it should be really good and branded with our school theme and be at least the yellow that it is district wide as opposed to the color choice that we have there. So we look forward to seeing that one done. Some of the safety things that we did, upgrading some doorknobs over at Tibbetts. After they had done the referendum or the addition over there, they had done a doorknob upgrade, but for some reason there's 6 doors that did not get turned over. And you can kind of see there in an active situation, that's obviously having to throw a deadbolt, which is too long of a process. So if you look at the completed picture, we kind of took those out and we got to where it was similar with every other doorknob in the building. The CO2 tank that we relocated from downstairs at the pool, the main reason, actually the only reason for doing that is because of the corrosive environment down underneath the pool. If you guys have never been down there, I'm happy to take you and give you a full tour. All right. It is quite it's huge. Right. But what was happening was so many of those CO2 tanks were rusting out, which is costing the district money to have to replace those. So like in some of my previous slides there, they're all generally located outside. So we moved it outside, less corrosive, should be a last. I know it's probably not the prettiest thing to look at, but if it's saving money and, in the grand scheme of things, it's a lot safer for everybody. Then our notorious sinkhole there is our last one. And if you check with Mr. Keel, he'll let you know that his truck did kind of go into that hole. That's kind of the final straw there. It was like a couple of days before we were scheduled to have that done, and his tire did drop in a little bit. So it's good that we had it. And if you look at the lower picture, the kind of the root cause there is where storm drain is going into the main basin. The tuck pointing around that, I don't know if you can see that, it's kind of disintegrated over time. So hopefully that's something that doesn't become chronic for us with a lot of the ones that were built in that era, but that's kind of what caused it. So then the water was just kind of washing through, and eventually it just gave way. So we're happy that it didn't take down the Kilpatrick memorial that it's around there, because it was kind of one of those risks when they were cutting it all up was that retaining wall going to be able to withstand it or not, and it held up. So we're happy with that. Our playground revamps, this is our Jackson one, and you can kind of see from the picture on the right that 8 to 10 inches of blue rubber that you see should not be there. That was like a huge drop down into the playground, which made it extremely difficult for students and staff alike to be able to get in and out. So we brought in between Jackson and Tibbetts 22 super bags, as they call them, of rubber mulch, and we got those spread out. And we do fortunately enough have a couple of bags left so that we can kind of refill over the next couple of years and try to keep it as full as possible. But this was definitely a team effort. We see our grounds crew there with the tractor. We have a lot of football players in If you go to the next one, you'll see this is our group of football players over at Tibbetts. I mean, those guys put a ton of sweat equity into this project for us. And I can tell you that they saved us a ton of time and labor by doing that, because 22 pallets of mulch, it doesn't seem like it's a lot, it's a lot. And I can tell you that rubber mulch does not scoop as easy as wood mulch, and they put in the time, it was worth the donuts. So, so it was a win-win for everybody, because I know that coach loves to give back to the community, so we like that. A couple of community impact projects, I only put the one on the left on the wall. I know that this was something that was spearheaded by Mr. Keel after the tragic passing of Randy. This is in the Suki gym. I know that it was always his thing to have that climbing wall there, so did a little bit of branding behind that and put a plaque to the right there, and he ordered some mats that were customized with that image there. So I applaud him for spearheading that one, and we kind of got that up and going for them. The pump house, the youth football was getting a new shed, so we were able to get that as a hand-me-down. And it doesn't sound like much, but if you guys are familiar with our track at all, with the way that water comes across, right? It floods, and what we're pictures. Yeah, we're definitely hoping that this is a preventive measure, because what we'll do is we'll take some of our generators that we had purchased, we'll get a crack dug right here this fall, and hopefully, if all goes as planned, right, we'll be able to be a lot more proactive instead of reactive in that situation, where we can get this up and running, have the generators going to be pumping that water before it ever even thinks about wanting to get across the street. And the one on the right, the Raise 9 Square, this was a project that was spearheaded by the PTO over at the middle school. The concrete slab is now poured over there, and we're just waiting for it not to be 120 degrees to get out there and start looking at assembling that. It'll probably be shortly after school year starts. Then, of course, there's some projects that you guys are probably aware of, like refreshing those older spaces. We had the tennis shades, or we got the tennis shades. That was obviously another community donation that we definitely appreciate, but it added a lot, I think, to the tennis courts. And not just the tennis courts. Kind of as you're pulling in and driving by, it's a centerpiece. I mean, those things look spectacular out there. The design of those was great. So I love seeing those, and obviously they're getting great use out of them. The electrical upgrades in the tech ed room at the middle school, in meeting with Mr. Zweifel over there, I mean, they were short on outlets. They needed more ability to have their room set up on a more permanent basis. He was running into issues where he had to constantly move stuff back, move stuff forward. So by adding, and I'm just showing a couple of the drop downs that he has there, there was obviously a lot more that was added to help him to be able to assist the students there. In our old computer lab upstairs at the middle school is been converted into a project lead away space. Mr. Truman told me I need to do a better job of taking before pictures, so you could have seen what it looked like before, but it's definitely been painted out, and it's an amazing space now. I know that there's some grant money that came in that they're able to use to buy new equipment for there, but the electrical upgrades and the painting was definitely stuff that adds to that. The improvements that we made safety-wise at the high school. If you're familiar with the entry of the high school, it was not a good setup for disabled students that were trying to get in. So by moving those buttons, obviously, that you see over to the post, it now allows the opportunity for them to hit the call button, right? And then after they release the door, to be able to use the handicap push button there, so that the door can open and they can progress into the lobby. Previously, it would have been to the left of the door, where it was impossible for them to use the button, back up to the post, hit button, move forward before it. So this is much better, with something that was strongly suggested by the staff over at the high school. We worked to get that done for them. The updated electrical on all the gas meters was to prepare for our pre-purchase gas that we're going to be doing this winter. So we had to make sure that we had outlets set up in all those, and most of our buildings were set up. But we did have to do some minor electrical upgrades there. So concrete repairs around the district. This is just a small little showing of that. And we have more to go, but the picture on the left, it's hard to believe that that was our west side drop-off zone, right, with the buses, so, or I'm sorry, with the cars. So definitely give that, you can see the picture all the way to the far right there, it's gonna be a much better drop off with a lot less trip hazard there. The one that you see with the triangle, that was a section of the playground in the back of West Side. That was a huge concern as a trip hazard as well, so, you know, just some small samplings in the top corner there, we did a bunch of curb repairs that have been broken over the course of time, so getting those back up to speed, we prioritize obviously when it came to both these in the asphalt, 100% based on safety. I mean, there's probably other areas that are more eyesores, but these, I mean, you look at the one on the left there, that would have been the Jackson in the front of the school. And then the parent drop off would be the next picture over, so. And then squaring off some of those playground areas there, and if you drive by them now, and I didn't do a good job, I could have probably put a photo on there. We have more of a curved exit coming out of those, so we have them cut off, and then we put it at about a 45-degree angle so that that pea gravel will stay in better. And it's a better transition for students being able to go in and out as opposed to just a cut edge, so. Some of the major purchases that we did, obviously we had the robotic field painter, the propane burnisher, and some wet dry vacs and just typical household items that we have. We're gonna talk first a little bit about the robotic field painter, that's gonna be our primary one. And that image that I had there, I put that there for a reason, because if you want to go back 1 second, Jason, right? It's a standalone item, right? And I took that picture this morning because that painter was out there doing its thing, and there's no other team members that are there. We had 3 guys that were out mowing fields and areas and completely nowhere around that while that robot was doing the work for us today, right? And we can move forward then, right? So we want to talk about pre-turf tank, after turf tank in terms of some of our expenses and where our savings could have been. And this, we sat down with our grounds crew last week. And I think it's important to note the size of what we're doing. 6 football fields and 1 soccer field is our typical layout in a fall, where we can kind of do the breakdown there with 110 man hours is typically what it would take to do it without the turf tank, where we're down to just 10 man hours with the turf tank. If you did a breakdown at a 40-hour value for employees, we can kind of see where that all leads us to. We base this all on if we were to extend this out for the fall. So, I mean, we're looking at 12 hours of weekly upkeep, which would be around, you know, the $4,300 to just 3 hours of weekly upkeep. And then we look at the paint cost. 7 fields would typically cost $240 each paint, or $2,160 per year, down to $1,100. So the estimated cost pre-turf tank is $10,800, where we're at $2,600 is our estimated cost, right, for this fall. So the savings is drastic at about $8,200. We know that we had the turf tank rental or the lease agreement that's around $10,000, right? And we know just on a cash point, you know, we have the entire spring season to go, so we know that it'll give us value there. But the other more important part is it frees up 180 work hours that can be reallocated to other projects, which have a huge value in that as well. So we can keep going and working on things, whether it be curb appeal or other projects that we have around the district, right, as a result of being able to keep that going there. So even though right now, I mean, and again, we're only 1 season into it, and I know there's an annual cost that comes with it. If we can save around $8,200 in a fall season, we're probably be about $5,000 in the spring season, just ballparking. But free up 250 hours on a year as well to reallocate towards other things. I think it's definitely worth this way.
Yeah.
So. Right, and then another thing that we've been working on this year is our energy management, and we, you know, one of the things we did, we created the district's first energy management plan, and we kind of went over that when Katie James was here a couple of months ago. We added the data wrangler that we previously had at the middle school and high school. We added that to the district office in Jackson as well, because they were a big energy source too. We've been doing a lot in extensive pre-maintenance plan, working with Premistar, who has been fantastic for us, and we've been working to correct and identify a lot of deficiencies in our system so that we can work on improving those. And we've used a lot of different cooling practices to save energy. So moving on, this is just kind of going over some of our energy savings per month. Now, this is just the high school. In the middle school, you have to kind of keep in mind that a lot of the practices that we use at the high school and middle school, we kind of put into play at all of our others, but we wouldn't have the data to show that per se, because we don't have the data wrangler. I think it's important to see just kind of the progress. If you look at July of 2023, you know, we did make that initial savings of $5,800, but in June of 24, it was up to $8,200 of electrical savings. You know, I think as a district, we've been making a lot of progress, and this really isn't about trying to find a way to save $50,000 or $100,000. This is about trying to find ways to just heat, cool, and energize our schools in the times that it's actually needed, right? And not have the wasted cost of keeping it up and running when it's just not necessary. So a lot of this, although there's been some sacrifice, there's probably been days where we should have had the AC on, or we missed turning it on for a meeting. But all in all, I think that it's a good effort district-wide to get to this point, and I look forward to moving on. So one of the other things we did, we're working on building a future plan. We did have IRS in here to do a roof assessment for us, as well as a visual hardscape study, which is data that we can use then to create a 10-year plan, which we'll kind of discuss later. But then we also have a weather hazard plan, which would be Pierce Guys Consulting that's coming in to get all of our buildings work with us to make sure they're storm ready, which would make the National Weather Services standards so that we're just weather safe in all of our buildings, where we're allocating the safest places in our buildings for all of our students and staff to be in case of severe weather. So just kind of summarize our goal for 2024-25. We want to make sure that we can build that 10-year hardscape plan so that we can start to really analyze that data, right, and put it into play, as well as a 10-year roof replacement plan in our HVAC plan as well. As we know, we have some dated equipment and roofs and obviously hardscape, so we want to put that into a cycle so that we know what our biggest priorities are. We're going to continue to do the safety improvements around the districts to make sure that we're emphasizing keeping safe schools, as I know is a priority to everybody, but make sure that those projects are a high priority. And obviously, we're going to continue to find ways to conserve energy uses around the district, because that seems to be a way that we can really kind of hone in on a few things and make an impact as well. So I'm pretty sure that's my last slide. That's it. I don't know. Let's see.
I just need to take a moment and compliment Nick and the work he's done and working with the staff this year, and he's only been here 9 months.
Yeah.
So he's really done a lot in terms of, I'll say, the limited resources we've had, because you may recall we held on a lot of our maintenance projects. So it was just looking at kind of existing areas and prioritizing that. And he maximized that, him and his team. So compliments to you, Nick.
Yeah,
Team
all those,
effort, obviously.
you know, when you say that, you know, an $8,000 savings, it's, you know, it's not that, you feel like it's not that much, but when you add up all those $8,000 savings in different places, it adds up.
It all adds up in a hurry, and that's why, I mean, getting the team involved and doing some of these projects, I mean, I think we probably saved about $12,000 to $15,000 just by doing more hands-on project for the guys too. I mean, they put a lot of sweat equity in this summer. I mean, we've been really in the grind, so.
And getting the football team to help with stuff, and, you know, I love it. That's
And to give you an idea, just that alone, you said it probably would have taken about 2 weeks to do.
If we had put our guys out there in between mowing and doing all their other responsibilities, it would have been 2 to 3 weeks of labor that they would have been out there.
Yeah.
You know, you can do the math on that. It would have been costly for 3 of our guys to be out there, not just in the labor that they would have been putting into it, right? But what we would have been losing time on.
Exactly.
And doing it in all those other categories. So that football team, like I said, best donuts I ever bought, or to get those guys out there to help. But I thank Coach Galani for that too, because he made sure that they were there at 7 a.m. or 8 a.m. to kick that stuff out. So
that's great.
Evan said he'll help out next time he volunteered himself. Well, every job.
That's gonna be every 12 years. I'm good, I'm saying.
You guys have any questions, or?
Appreciate the safety first outlook on that too. That's that was noticeable. I do have a question on the robot though. For some reason, I thought we bought it.
We did not.
Okay. Right, the upfront cost on that, if we were to have purchased it, would have been, I believe, $62,000.
Okay.
Or something like that, so the reason that we chose not to buy it, at least right now, is the technology is always changing. Right, so if we would have done a locked in lease or purchase it, I mean, we would have been holding on to that technology for at least 5 years, but if you would have done $10,000 to $11,000 a year. Now with this one, if we don't like it, we can have an arrangement after 1 year. It's just a 1 year lease on it. If we're not getting any other, we can, once we know we like it, we can sign a longer lease. Right, but the great thing is if technology picks up and they have a turf tank 3.0 that holds more paint and all that, we can send this bad boy back in, get the next one, and it's really no additional cost to us. So I think it gave us the best position to be able to keep the best for the district.
Yeah.
I just, for some reason, I thought, I remember seeing that we were gonna purchase it or something, but no, this is a
I
great,
did,
great plan.
I remember asking the question
Yeah,
at
you
the
asked the
district
question,
meeting,
I remember.
at the annual meeting going, we're
That's
spending
what it
what
was.
for what?
Yeah.
But the explanation and the cost savings of the labor time
The labor.
is amazing. That really crystallizes it, so.
Nobody can ever replace human health. I mean, so the
Right,
nobody
right. Oh,
can
don't
have
get me
it,
wrong.
but just having those
It frees you
108.
up to
Yeah.
get other things
Yeah.
done.
So much
Yeah.
more that can be done. And like I said, we're still getting to learn the process. I mean, we've had it since, July 20th. So,
About a
or
month.
maybe, it's only been about a month in our circulation here. So we'll start to see that freed up labor now as we move forward to the start of the school year, be much more,
Profitable?
yeah.
Well, and the crew always did a great job painting the lines, but they're immaculate. I mean, they're just, they're perfect.
Yeah.
All
Yeah,
the
robots.
robots.
I gotta watch that thing.
Yeah, come out.
I can't like it.
Dad in the schedule.
Absolutely amazing. Trying to set up a
Robots running.
tripod, right? And this thing is driving all around on its own. I mean, just. Hey, Jason Lawrence did a great job of learning the system. I know that Jake Rasmussen from the IT department was really hands-on in getting that up and running for us, but it literally is just, I have the tripod, getting a GPS signal, they have the same start point every time.
Yeah.
Hit the field, it just goes.
Yeah, I'm assuming it's using similar technology to what farmers use in their tractors now, because the farmers don't drive their tractors anymore.
So,
It's all run by satellite.
it's in a couple of rechargeable batteries.
Yeah.
So,
I saw this movie with Arnold Schwarzenegger in it one time. I don't know where the creepy.
Just saying.
right.
Well, thank you very much.
Thanks,
Thank you.
you did it.
Okay, now we're moving on to our director's report and annual seclusion and restraint report.
All right, so this is obviously our annual seclusion restraint report, which is not the best topic to talk about, but I'm sandwiching it with some positive information to start. I think you might remember last year we received the ES3 grant, is what it's called. Very few schools in the state get that, but we were selected, and that was really exciting for us. And now after being 1 year in, it's even more amazing, I think, like realizing what we got with this grant is a lot more than the money. We got some targeted support from a really good trainer and coach from BPI who we love and the staff loves. And so I think that's really positive. So we have her for free until the end of time, apparently. So the purpose of this grant is to enhance the social and emotional skills of students with IEPs who are neurodiverse. So these are students with autism, PBD, OHI, those criteria. So really looking at how do we implement evidence-based intervention strategies in the school environment, which goes back to teacher and adult learning, right? And how do we do that so that we can prevent those safety behaviors, those challenging behaviors that lead to safety concerns or an imminent threat to those around them. That's the purpose of the grant. That's the purpose of all the work. So one of the goals is to reduce exclusion restraint, obviously, but it's also to increase adult learning and the experience for students who are neurodiverse, because seclusion and restraint is hard for everybody. It's hard for students that witness it, the students that are in it, the staff that are in it, everyone, right? So it is a serious topic, and that's why, we closely monitor it. But I think that this has been super positive, so I'm gonna let Allison talk a little bit about the grant and the work that she's been a part of as the district internal coach. And Allison just got married.
I did.
I've always known her as Allison Collins, and now she's Allison Kusha.
I'm still not used to it.
So I'm gonna let her kind of talk through some of those grant updates in terms of our goals and the data related to that. And then we'll end with the numbers that we need to talk about, okay?
All right, so as a district, we kind of put together a team of teachers and staff members from the different elementary buildings to start. And what I love about this grant, and I think what our staff has really appreciated, is it's not about something more, right? Like we have a lot of things that we're asking teachers to do right now. It's about enhancing what's already in place. So we have a system for something. What can we do to make it better? What can we do to make it apply to more of our students, especially those who are neurodiverse? So our district team that we put together had a big kickoff last summer, and the goal that we set as a district was to improve the ability of all staff to effectively respond to student output through adult learning, coaching and support, and to grow the knowledge of staff for working with all students. Because it's not just our students with disabilities who are going to struggle. And so we've really set about to do that by kind of starting with special ed and then expanding out. So as Emily mentioned, one of our major metrics was looking at that seclusion restraint, but there's a bunch of other things that I would like to just briefly mention that we are also monitoring to try and meet that goal. So if you look at the graph on the right, that's our seclusion restraint for the last 3 years. And you can see that last year, 2022-2023 school year, we really had a spike in our seclusion restraint. And so since we had that grant, the far right bar is where we were at the end of last year. So we're already seeing a reduction in those numbers, which Emily will dive into a little bit deeper with her annual report. But that was kind of our main metric. And then we looked at some other things too. So education environments refers to where students with disabilities are receiving their instruction for their IEPs. And through the state, and I'll let you jump in if I'm not explaining this correctly, but the highest you can receive is a score of a 2 related to students being included in classrooms with their peers. And in previous years that we had been at a 1, and last year we were at a rating of a 2 by the state. Is that correct, Emily? So that has been a really cool thing to see improve as we've been working with staff through the work in this grant. And then a huge part of this is making sure that we're training the staff, especially our support staff, our paraprofessionals who are working with these students in the classrooms and really building up their capacity to support, to kind of prevent those escalated behaviors. And so we did a lot of work with our trainer, Katie Berg, through the state last year to provide some staff learning. And it's really hard to monitor whether or not staff learning has been effective, right? Like we can't just be in every building watching every paraprofessional implement these strategies. And so we were able to get some feedback from them, and we had them set their own goals. And that bar graph, or sorry, the pie chart on the bottom has the blue is how many of the staff members felt like they were able to meet their goals with the support we were providing through the grant and the professional development. So a lot of those adult learning opportunities are focused on evidence-based practices, and we as a district have been really looking at self-management strategies for students and then teaching them and utilizing visual supports. So we'll mention that a little bit too as we move forward. And then the other metric that we're using obviously is the student data. So every team in the elementary buildings has a target student that they've chosen, 1 or 2, and we're really monitoring closely. Are they spending time in the classroom? What behaviors are we seeing that we want to help them improve? How can we build staff up to help them better support their teams? So those are our other systems that we're working through. And then now we're in year 2. So this is kind of exciting because year 1 was kind of muddling through trying to figure out how this fit with what we had going on. And now we've gained some momentum and seen some positive results. And so each student that we decide to use as kind of the lens for our evidence-based practice strategies has what we call an implementation team. And those are just our building teams, our paraprofessionals, our gen ed teachers, our admin, our school sites, working with those students. And so we're hoping to expand those teams up into the middle school this year a little bit. And then also look at how we can now take this into the building structures that exist through the existing committees and see what we're doing for these special education students, how they can support all students in the elementary and now into the middle school level. And then from a kind of a content standpoint, we're looking at implementing Introception, which is really a body awareness curriculum. That's a precursor to our zones of regulation that the elementary schools use in the 4K sites to start building that awareness for our youngest learners early. And then we're also striving to improve our family engagement. So in August at National Night Out, we had a booth that we partnered with the Autism Parent Caregiver Support Group. And we're able to provide some visual supports like schedules for families and social stories for families for students who are neurodiverse at home. And through that, we were also put out a request form. So if families had a specific need, they could get that feedback. So we had a few families reach out, and so we're looking to expand that. And then we just want to give families the opportunity to give us some feedback and tell us what they need so that we can expand the work that we're doing in the schools into our community.
Yep, and so with that expanded kind of work this year, Sarah Troxel, who's a program support teacher for the district, will be taking on the role of a coach in both the middle school and West Side and helping those implementation teams as well. So any questions about the grant before we roll back into seclusion and restraint?
How long is the grant?
3 years.
Okay.
But like Emily mentioned, we have access to their resources forever.
Okay.
They allow us to bring back the state representatives, and we have access to all their trainings for as long as they exist. So that's been really cool.
So other process changes that we made over the past year, the crash and chill spaces were kind of revisited within each building to provide a calming space that really is conducive to that regulation and co-regulation. If the student's acting out, physically, generally they're dysregulated. Most of the time when they're little, that requires access to a regulated adult to have that co-regulation and attunement. If they're dysregulated and they're in a class where other people are dysregulated, they're not going to be able to regulate. So we kind of just revised those spaces with dimmer switches, access to music, fidgets, a crash pad, just a place to chill. We really did a lot of explicit teaching with our staff in the building about what that looks like when you have a student there, because that does impact seclusion. Because if you go right to just putting them there and shutting the door, and there's not that interaction with the staff where we're able to just sit with the kid and just breathe, that alone can help bring a child down. So we did a lot of training around that. And so I think part of the reduction in seclusion, students were still using the room when they needed a break, but the door wasn't needing to be shut. And so it wasn't seclusion. Does that make sense? So there was a little bit of a tweak just to how we use those spaces. And I think that went pretty well. Additional reporting procedures and targeted support. One of the trainings I had attended, they kind of talked about, what do you do when you're struggling with high numbers in this area? And they talked about ensuring that you do the debriefing meetings and those conversations and IEP meetings is really, really important, because if you don't do that, you just show up and do the same thing tomorrow, right? Mm-hmm. So really taking the time to sit down and debrief. Okay, what happened? What was the trigger? Are we noticing patterns? And it can help you align the services and support. So we put a pretty, strict process in place for that, requiring those detailed debriefings and making sure parents are notified same day. And then we required IEP meetings to be held. So you're reviewing and revising those plans more frequently, changing services and supports, and sometimes changing placement. If it's just not appropriate and safe, we have had a couple of those situations where we've changed placement. And then we had a building level review process. So if you had more than 3 incidents in a given month, then district office staff was kind of joining your team just to problem solve, like, how can we help support what's going on? This has obviously been a challenge for your team. Like, how can we support you to get what you need going with the student? And then a shift in training as well, really focusing on kind of training for the building crisis team in a smaller number, and then doing the masses more with the preventative stuff, the de-escalation, the verbal intervention. So kind of just shifting how we did that. So those were some changes we had. So these are our required reporting numbers. If you go to the building level data, it'll give you a breakdown of each building. It was a substantial, decrease, down from 140 to 72 for seclusion, down from 130 to 70. If you look at the building level data though, Jason, if you want to click into that, I think that's even more, like, I feel like it's even more telling of kind of where, if you scroll down, most of, our highest numbers are at our, outplacements. So even though we place students out at Lakeland or TRS or Clay Academy, those students are still our students and we still report any incidents. Those get sent to me and then I save them and tally them up and we report on it. So our elementary buildings who are currently under kind of monitoring from DPI with this their numbers reduced substantially. And so they should be really proud of the efforts in their building. And I know for a fact, those teams were meeting on a weekly basis for some of these students who tend to have those challenging behaviors. And they were really rallying around, like, how do we support the student? The families were engaged. Everybody was kind of working in the same direction. So I'm really proud of that data with them.
We're basically looking at about 8 students on our end that we're working with in those situations.
Yep, so the implementation team is really, honestly, it's really just a forced IEP process. Like, this is really the process DPI would probably like you to go through for every kid, but it's very time intensive in terms of meeting weekly, analyzing the data, making tweaks, onboarding everyone. So it's really just slowing the process down so that you go through every step. You're doing the root cause analysis, you're looking at data. So the implementation teams are doing that work with those handful of students at questions?
And it's always fascinating to me how, as you go up in the age levels, how those numbers drop, you know, by
Right.
the time you get to that middle school and high school.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
you know, yeah, seeing students who in elementary school to the next year, just, yeah. I don't know what exactly the science is beyond that, or if the,
There's probably a lot of factors, but I definitely think as students get older, they learn how to regulate better, right? I mean, that's the first kind of piece of it, is being able to regulate.
I think another big piece of that is seeing them with their peers and being more aware of how their peers are reacting and
Self-awareness.
being aware of that self-management piece. So being in the classroom with same
And have the cognitive ability to make that connection.
Yes.
Yeah.
And seeing how, you know, my behavior impacts someone else.
Yeah.
Thank you.
That decrease, the drastic decrease, that's awesome. And can you attribute that to the increased training for the adults? Is that maybe like the primary
I
thing,
think-
or is it kids or
To
what?
me, I think it's the increased meetings,
Okay,
like Sarah can probably chime in on this too. 'cause
for
she's
the
in the
adults
building,
or
but-
for the,
The IP meetings, like, I don't know that we were having review revise meetings as much as we needed to on some of these students who are having really intense behaviors.
sure,
Bringing the family in, sitting down with everybody,
Yeah.
like, hey, this is happening, you know, every day, we're not in a good pattern with this, like, we need to change something substantially.
yeah,
And there were substantial changes made. Sometimes it would be, you know, a modified schedule throughout the day. Sometimes it would be pulling that student more into a resource room setting or more of a self-contained setting. So usually there were substantial changes at that meeting. Either something substantially looked different within that building, or, you know, in one case, the student was placed out as well this year. So, I mean, really though, getting the team together and looking at, is this the appropriate setting for this student? And if so, what does that need to look like? And if this isn't appropriate, here are some other options we can kind of look at. So I think it's just getting the team, I'm not gonna say the adult learning hasn't been helpful too,
right,
but I really think having those IP meetings where you're really looking at, is this appropriate? Is this placement appropriate? And what do we need to change? To me, like, that was probably the most.
And the parents are brought in after the second one, but every single one of those incidences, within 24 hours, the team at the school who was involved or could potentially be involved had to come to a table and answer what went well with this, what we need to do better, how can we prevent this from happening again? So it's like on this, like within 24 hours, we're really coming together to make sure that it's handled the best that we can each time.
sure.
So.
It'd be interesting to see how, if there's a correlation with the parents being involved more, if they're more receptive to what the team is seeing and suggesting, and I like to have it more interaction with the parents. You know, if there's any pushback there, or they're being,
I think, like, yes, like, I think this is a very hard thing
Yeah.
for parents. I
yeah,
mean,
exactly.
I'm a parent, if my student was being restrained at school, I would have a hard time. And I'm a director of special ed,
Of course.
You know, so that's a very hard thing, and so it's not easy.
Yeah.
But I think when we come to the table with, you know, nobody wants to do this.
Yeah.
We don't want this for your child or any child.
Right.
And really looking at our staff, was it imminent threat? Because we shouldn't be doing it if it's not an imminent threat. But if it was, parents generally can wrap their head around that. Like, okay, you had to do it so someone else think it hurt, I understand, but it's emotional.
Yeah.
And so I think being able to say like, we wanna help do something different, this isn't working. You know, we've had good luck most of the time. So I think that that's, you know, kind of what we're trying to do and just engage them in that work and kind of walk alongside them through that pain.
Yeah.
Because it is painful.
Yeah, okay, so that, walk
Yeah.
with them through that pain, because that's gotta be tough.
It is.
Cool.
Any other questions?
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, ladies. Okay, moving on to the referendum update.
Bill, we wanted to share two items with you. These are in, I would say, a final draft form, but open to additional feedback before we go and print or publish. The first document in your board notes is what we call a fact sheet. It's just to provide information related to the operational referendum. So November 5th is the date of that, and I provided that there so we can review that. It talks about what's on the ballot, the specific question. Verbatim, word for word, is listed there. We have information in regards to it. It's really hard. A fact sheet, we designed it to just be two-sided, a one-pager. And so trying to condense and share the why behind and, you know, the factual information on it is a challenge with that limited space. But we have a little segment on the, you know, how did we get here? And the chart which shows the reality is the reason why there's a gap is that since 2009, 2 years before, I might forget the verbs. In Doyle's last term is when the law changed and they broke away from keeping school funding pegged with the CPI.
Right.
Prior to that, Thompson had passed a law with the revenue caps that the increase in school aid would match inflation. And so schools didn't run into this issue. It was very rare to have a operational referendum because it really wasn't needed prior to 2009. At that point, because of the state budget crisis, they separated from that practice and they never went back to it. So at this point, you know, 15 years later, it's for us in our school district, it's more than $3,380 per pupil, which comes out to over $9 million a year gap between what we would have had the state stayed with the inflationary increase. So in short, we would have $9 million more a year to work with at this point had the state kept with that trip. How it will affect the taxes and the cost of it. This is the estimated tax impact. Again, is we're speaking to the multiple, not because there's a home, we're talking about the home worth. And then we did put in 300,000 of it. Homes vary greatly. For me, it's easier to do the 10 factors. So, but we put both on there based on feedback that, you know, some people often think that, well, there's no home for 100,000. We know that. It's just so you can multiply based on what your home cost is. Spoke very briefly in regards to what has the district done to cut costs. I know we've gone through this significantly, but it's an every year process. This past year was 1.25 million, and actually I think we exceeded 1.25 million at the end in cuts plus revenues. Cost savings highlights. I mean, there are a lot of items that we could put on there, and we'll link on the website the full accounting of it over the past decade, but these were just some of the highlights that we listed there. And then why is the referendum important? And while we've seen some districts that have identified exactly, well, if we don't pass this, we will cut X number of positions and so forth, the board is committed to using attrition and so forth and, you know, taking other aspects, but I think it's safe to say that what it would result in is larger class sizes, longer bus routes, reduced student programming, and less support for students, teachers, and families. Which, you know, reduction in staff overall, administrative staff, support staff, teaching staff, so. Okay. And then we have a link that takes people to the webpage. Any questions on the fact sheet? Or thoughts?
No, I looked over it today and I thought it looked great. I downloaded it actually. And plan on printing it out and giving it to a few people.
Forget Katie Hoffman, I mean, the whole team looked at it, but Katie's excellent at putting the pieces together and the graphic design and all those pieces.
No, I thought it was really good. It breaks it down into small bites of information. That are easy to digest and. I think it's great.
I mean, I wish Governor Thompson's law had never been changed and that we never had to go to referendum, because we would very easily be able to live within our means, so to speak. That's what I often will hear people say, well, you just need to live within your means. And districts used to be able to. It's just the whole philosophy has kind of changed at that state level to where, well, if you need the additional revenue, you know, we as the legislators aren't necessarily going to give that to you. You need to have your community vote and support the referendum.
Right, and that's a political movement.
And
when do those have to go to print?
Yeah, my only comment on the fact sheet is, you know, we're not talking anything about the ESSER funds replacing, you know, the funding from the state.
Oh.
That's to me, that's where. That's the clip.
Well, yeah,
because the state said, oh, well, we're just stopping because you got that federal money for those years. We're not replacing it. That kind of snowballed us into this.
That is addressed on the website though.
it is on the website, but really at the heart of that is this right here.
Yeah, I know, but
because it compounded it.
It's why we came to a screeching halt though.
Yeah.
Why so
And-
rapidly all of a sudden?
Right. Yeah, I mean, you do make a statement, this was made worse with the 0% funding increases during the worst inflationary years. Well, those happen to be
right here,
COVID years that.
Yeah, I know it's complicated, it's hard to get it in a nutshell,
Right.
Maybe I've been at too many committee meetings on it. But that to me was and it's I know it's very complicated.
I think that's a great point to probably bring up. You know, we do have it, but I think those are good points to bring up when we have the community meetings or when we're talking to people.
Yeah.
But at the heart of it, because a lot of people don't understand, you know, the ESSER funds, the complexity of that, but it does outline the 0% increase during the 2 years of higher inflation.
Right.
The clip was delayed because we got the federal funds to backfill.
Correct.
Correct.
You'll notice the date on there too. We set a date for at least one community information meeting in the high school. So that's that October 21st date. But we're also putting together a list of groups that might be interested. So I know Jody and Katie got that on another sheet that we're just starting to put dates and reaching out to the civic groups and such.
Yeah, so in going through it, if you have feedback, we haven't sent anything to the printer. We'd like to get them sent to the printer soon. But there are some other, you know, on the website, we go a little bit more in depth on that. We didn't have a lot of traffic when we looked at the last referendum on the website. But it's something that we can refer to in the presentation meetings. We can share on the social media links and so forth. And I think They did a very nice job laying it out. This one, I wish we had the updated data. Because the projection now is that we're in the bottom 15, possibly in the bottom 10 states in the nation. Just since 2002 to now, we went from, when I left high school, we were in the top 10 in funding per pupil. It's part of the fact that the school out west, doing the student teaching and practicums, class sizes were 34, 36. I'm going back to Wisconsin. It's a phenomenal education system. The wages that they pay teachers is a livable wage. It's good benefits. And that's why I made the conscious decision to move back, even though my family had moved from Wisconsin. But I wanted to come and be a part of that educational system. I never in my wildest dreams envisioned us being close to the bottom 10 in school funding out of states in the nation. But that's where we're at. All right. Any other questions or thoughts? And again,
just under, how are other Wisconsin school districts addressing funding challenge?
They're going to operational referendum.
Yeah, but it just says this November, there are additional operational referendums. Can't we give them a number of how many other districts are doing it?
Today's the last day for school districts to pass resolutions.
Okay.
So there's several districts in our vicinity that have that on their school board agenda. So I think it's gonna be a week before they report that out.
Okay,
sure. We'll update those numbers.
Okay.
No, thank you.
That's a good point.
I think we probably, do we want to go back and do like a 2-year snapshot on how many went or?
No, I think what's currently happening is most relevant.
Yeah.
That we can say that there's 100 other districts out for operational referendum this November, whatever that is, it is, and
you could add on, and over the past 2 years.
Yeah, because I think that's where, as a result of that fiscal cliff, that's where you've seen probably close to 50% of the districts now, at least have gone to operational referendum in the last 2 years.
Yeah.
So I think that's tied to that fiscal cliff.
Agreed.
I think the number should be the number referendum this year, because there were a lot in the April election. That I don't think we should have people not think about that too, that it affected the state no matter this year, no matter where the election was.
Yes.
Yeah. There were, and then I think, was it just last November? No, maybe in the month. Yeah, there's been a lot in the last 2 years. It's okay. Very good. That's what we wanted to share. It's close to ready to launch.
Great. Thank you.
Good stuff.
All right, moving on to the personnel recommendations.
The personnel sheet. Oh, let me go back to the agenda. Ooh, we had a couple curveballs right at the end of the school year, but we were able to navigate those, and it worked out actually really well for the most part there. So this is should be our last significant number of personnel changes as we go on this downtown wood. I do want to wish Lauren Davies well, as she accepted a position up close to her home. And then we did have a few other resignations, for the most part there. Want to welcome Linda Frankenberg back.
I was just gonna say, we got Linda back.
As an amateur, we had 2 retirees come back, and was Paulson on the previous
last sheet.
Yeah. So not as bus drivers, but they're coming back to help, so we appreciate that.
All right, so looking for an approval for the personnel recommendation sheet.
I'll move to approve the personal recommendation sheet for August 26, 2024, including new employment contracts conditioned upon passing background check and district mandated drug screening as presented.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
So moved and seconded to approve the personnel recommendation sheet for August 26, 2024, including new employment contracts conditioned upon passing in the background check and district mandated drug screening. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
I do not have any school gifts to present this evening.
And then the last item is the second reading of the modifications to the professional and support staff employee handbooks.
I did not receive any further feedback. If there's anything you want to discuss, we can go to that. Otherwise, it's ready for approval.
Okay. Anything that anybody wanted to ask about that? Okay, I'm looking for a motion to approve.
And move to approve the revised professional and support staff employee handbooks as presented.
Second?
I'll second.
Okay. So moved and seconded to approve the revised professional and support staff employee handbooks. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. And Jason, you had
Just one announcement, looking at scheduling the transportation committee meeting. Kevin had it in file. Are the members want to know September 9th at noon would work for the meeting? Otherwise, 5 o'clock. Okay. Oh. I wasn't gonna announce that. Yeah, I could. I'm sorry, which one works? Noon works for you? Okay. And then, yes, the dunk tank battle, UMass Idol Group, as Wednesday night, we'll have Elkhorn staff, John Handel and Dan Kill and their counterparts from Delavan, Darien. If you want to come and dunk Mr. Handel, 5 o'clock, 6
now,
o'clock.
is this to raise money for charity or I'm not sure.
Raising money for. I give Delavan, Darien credit. They, rope-a-dope this on that one. They're raising money for their program there. So we'll
Oh, so we're helping them raise money.
Yeah.
Oh, that's very charitable.
That's why.
I'll give you some help and we're.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when are we
This has a booth that's set up and they
When are you and Drew going?
raise money.
I mean, I go to Minnesota if you and Drew.
Yeah, so 6 o'clock on Thursday is Drew and myself. Aaron Gordon is at 5 o'clock on Thursday and Mr. McBurney is at 4 o'clock on Thursday. All right, and those are wristband days, Wednesday and Thursday, so. Mr. Keel and Mr. McBurney will probably get dunked. I'll just let the kids know they're not getting a single snow day. They're done.
Leverage. No.
All right.
It should be fun. I'm looking forward to it. Thank you. For reminding me.
All right.
What time are you?
I'm 6 o'clock on Thursday.
You know how quickly that water turns rancid?
Yeah.
That's.
Hey, would you like to trade slots?
I'm just hoping they put fresh water
Fresh
in
water.
on Thursday.
Dump some chlorine there.
I know.
Because
Yeah.
if Keel and McBurney have used up the fresh water, I don't know if I want to stay.
Do you want to?
I'll check with Mr. Stilling and see if we can get some Elkhorn singlets to wear for the dunk.
There. Is there a limit to how many times we can dunk you?
Your arm wears out.
Those are, all right.
I am looking for a motion to adjourn.
I think motion to adjourn.
Second.
So moved.
It's been moved and seconded to adjourn. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right.